There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted, and all the voyage of the life is bound to shallows and miseries. On such a full sea we are now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. In 1776, the average age of men who voted for the Declaration of Independence was 44. Yet the average age of men who actually fought or bled for the document promised was 20, around our age. The gist of what I'm saying is that they didn't wait for the right permission. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They looked around the world being built around them and realized that this was their responsibility, something they had to take care of. So why don't we? Wait. Okay, there is a gap between everything. A gap between acting and caring. A gap between actually acknowledging a problem and stepping in to fix it. My generation, more than any before it, has found quite a warm and a comfortable sanctuary in that gap. And it would be ironic if it wasn't sad, because let's agree on one thing. Our generation has the most resources and the most privilege. We are so privileged that we can afford to watch the world fall apart in 4K resolution. We are so privileged that we can afford to watch from outside. So we wait, and we rely on others to fix our problems, and that's why we never get represented enough. That's why nothing ever happens, and we complain about it. In 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was brutally murdered outside her New York City apartment. That eventful night, dozens of neighbors heard her screaming for rescue, yet no one stepped in. Not because they were cold-blooded. They didn't act out of malice, or precisely did not act at all. After that eventful night, where Kitty unfortunately died, psychologists invented a special term for that, which is called diffusion of responsibility. In theory, the more people share ownership of something, the less entitled and less responsibility they feel towards it. It's not out of ill intent or laziness or anything in that way. It's because the question, when does this become mine, never gets answered clearly enough to force a decision. Right now, my generation is treating the entire world like the apartment complex treated Kitty, who died. We have tricked ourselves into thinking that by just acknowledging the action, by making stupid tweets or Instagram posts, we are doing enough. Well, let me tell you something. Participation is by nature. Observation is by nature participation. What you see on your screens is not a horror movie set. Just recently, a man in Pakistan was falsely accused of blasphemy. He was dragged outside by a gang member, a mob, and brutally beat for hours. Then he was burned. The people you see standing here, they are not his accomplices or gang members. These are civilians, or were civilians. These people, instead of stepping in or taking actions, they started making videos, they started taking selfies. Yet, then they dared to apologize while they could have solved the problem. And right now, my generation is, unfortunately the man died, right? Right now, my generation is standing in a burning art gallery, and we're writing brilliant essays and tweets about how ugly the fire is, yet no one ever reaches for the fire extinguisher. So you might essentially ask a question, how exactly do we step out of audience and actually start acting? When I seek for an answer, I don't look too far. When the American Revolution began, Alexander Hamilton was just 17-years-old. He was an orphan, immigrant, son of an escort and a Scotsman. Alexander had no penny to his name and no institutional power whatsoever. He had every rational reason to keep his head down, to talk less and smile more, yet he didn't. Alexander wrote brilliant pamphlets, essays, and just by 19, he joined Washington's army. Out of 85 Federalist papers, Hamilton wrote the other 51. There is a saying that dying is easy, young man, yet living is harder. For Hamilton, living meant building. He decided that the distance between himself and the institutional power he desired was the exact reason he needed to speak up. The very chance that the government of the that the document of the public would fail was the exact motivator for him to speak. He didn't wait for the fight to subside to start building a financial architecture of a country that has not yet to be. He built it while it was burning. Yet Hamilton never got to experience what he built, one of the best countries. Hamilton was quite obsessed with the idea of legacy. So what is legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you will never get to see. I have a question for the audience. Who designed the sidewalk? Who designed the water fountain? Anyone? You see, these things are so ubiquitous. They're so woven into our everyday life that we don't know who designed them. These people who allowed me as a young girl to speak, who allowed you to be here, who allowed the society to function, they woke up every day and they made that unglamorous everyday choice to be engaged, to care for the people who come after you. They looked around and decided that the responsibility, the heavy burden of it, was theirs to carry. Yet, on the other hand, there is a big problem. Because of the ubiquitousness, we take it all for granted. We think that all the privileges we have are irrevocable, that those luxuries don't require mending. That this is wrong. Because once we forget that, it all slips away. John F. Kennedy once famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, yet ask what you can do for your country." And for decades, we have treated that like a dumb cliche, like a bumper sticker, yet there is a terrifying challenge for it. A terrifying challenge to stop asking when the world will fix itself and actually start participating in it. Civic responsibility is not something that begins with a certain birthday. It doesn't begin when you have a certain document or a degree. It begins when you stop waiting for it. You have to realize that legacy is not a goal. It's a choice, everyday choice to stay engaged, to work, often tirelessly and thanklessly. It's a choice that you have to make out of love. So every generation essentially inherits a world it didn't build, but leaves behind a world it did. So now that we've established that my generation has the intelligence, the passion, and all the resources to do that, we just don't work. We don't do anything in order to fix the mistakes we're acknowledging. Because we are putting the responsibility on that, on governments, on institutions, the legislators. And as I've said, we then complain that we are never represented enough. You have to understand it, not intellectually, but in your bones, that none of that is permanent, none of that is self-maintaining, and it requires tending. The moment, it does not arrive on its own. It arrives the instant you decide to stop waiting for it. Hamilton did not wait for the revolution was over to start building. He built it while it was happening, because he understood that fighting and building are not separate acts. They're the same act at different volumes. The question is never whether the world needs help or not. It always does. It always needs fixing. Alexander Hamilton made a decision to stay engaged, and he never got to witness what he did. The question is whether you are going to be someone who tends the world or someone who assumes that someone else will. And we already suffered the consequences of that. All you need is a decision that is yours, and a realization that where we are and where we could be, the gap between that is not someone else's to close. And ultimately, who lives, who dies, and who tells your story? People in this room will. The question is whether you'll have anything worth telling. Hamilton answered that question at 17, and for you, this question is still open. Thank you.